Welcome back again to not creative mornings. As you may have noticed, I changed the title graphic to creative briefings because I found it difficult to find the time in a busy morning to get to this consistently. So it was more of a challenge than I anticipated. So plus I got tired of saying that, you know, creative morning wherever you are in the world type of blurb, and I'm sure you got tired of hearing me say it. So creative briefings felt, creative briefing in the singular felt more appropriate. Briefing because it's like a creative brief, and also because these are meant to be little bite-sized tutorials, little dipping the toes into a little singular aspect of any given subject. So it's clever, right? Creative briefing, right? Anyway, so welcome back for the third time. Third time's a charm. Trying to get this episode streamed correctly with audio from my desktop synth to through OBS streaming system and out into the world. It's a learning process for everyone, so not in the least myself. So thanks for tuning back in if you were with me earlier, and welcome if this is your first time. Creative Briefing is a ad hoc live stream show where I dip my toe into the world of creativity and all of the little facets that orbit it, and that could be art, animation, video, music, graphics, anything and everything, whatever takes my fancy at that particular moment. So the idea being that with this strange new world we live in, many of us are finding ourselves with a little extra time. We're either on lockdown, or we've been furloughed, or we've been laid off, or we just are working from home and find ourselves with extra time in the house. Also, we may find ourselves looking for some sort of meaning in all of this. Maybe we're reevaluating with our work life adjusting where do we fit in the world, and maybe we're looking for some sort of meaning. I think creativity is great for that. I think creativity it gives us a sense of purpose, a sense of self, and the myth that a true artiste is born and not made. I mean, many artists are born and they naturally gravitate to one area or one discipline or another, and whereas other people aren't. But that doesn't mean to say all of us don't have creativity in us. I think that's what it is to be human. We all have creativity in us, whether we seek it out and make it part of our lives or our profession, or whether it's just something we do for fun, as an escape, or whether it's something that, like many people think, oh, I'm not creative, I can't do that. Well, there are many aspects to creativity, and we're trying to encourage and motivate and inspire here to get to get anyone and everyone exploring their own creativity. So today I want to reprise a show I did earlier today, incidentally, and also last week. I had similar audio problems, and I'm really hoping that this time it works out. We've got good clear audio, and while we're all sort of at home, locked down, or in some sort of isolation, particularly if you're a family, like I know here my son is doing his homeschooling, and then my wife is working from her home office, so we might have this extra time, but we don't always have a lot of space to set up and make a mess. So I'll sort of explore these little micro setups, what I call them, where we can use a minimal space, minimal setup to to dip our toe in and play, and like I say, get those creative juices, get our brains engaged, and get ourselves feeling good about ourselves and about our place in the world through creative exploration and play. So today I'm looking at a little micro setup that I sort of introduced last week, and that is the Beatstep MIDI controller and the Pro53 software synthesizer, soft synth, or VST as they're sort of known, which is proprietary technology developed by Steinberg Virtual Studio Technology. It's a lot of plugins for a big computer system that records and composes music. So many of these VSTs come as standalones, which means you can use them outside of the big digital audio workstation just as a standalone application. We don't always have time to set up a big session, multi-track session in Cubase or Logic, so we just want to jump in and play to get like those creative juices firing, like I said. So these little micro setups are great for that. So the Pro53 is a digital recreation, a digital modeling of a fantastic vintage analog hardware synthesizer, Sequencial Circuits Prophet 5, my bucket list synth. If I ever come across a stray $10,000 and have the time to hunt a good model down, this is the one synth I would really love to get my hands on. Fantastic sound, it's a monster, nasty sounding filter, beautiful sounding to really filthy sounding. It's really versatile and really usable. The Pro53 has done a fantastic job, I think, of remodeling that. Sadly, Native Instruments stopped supporting it and discontinued it many years ago. It was like their first software synth, I believe, and one of their firsts at least, and I won't upgrade my computer system because it no longer runs, and I just don't want to, run the risk of losing the ability to install it and use it. I love it so much, the sound it makes and how much fun it is to play. So let's take a quick look at the Pro53. It's the top section has all the knobs for controlling various aspects of the sound shaping, and the keyboard you can click on. Obviously it's more a visual representation of what the hardware looked like, but it's obviously not practical to place it by clicking the mouse, so which is where a hardware controller comes into play. So with this you have 8 presets per bank, and then you have 8 banks per file, and obviously 8 files, which gives you, I think, like 128 different sounds that you can load in. You're able to load in more setups, I guess, more banks of more presets. So if I go back to 111, so the Beatstep it's two things. It's a MIDI controller, which is it sends MIDI signals, note on, note off in this case, and MIDI controller messages, which we'll get into in a second. They control the virtual knobs on the software synth. So it also has a sequencer, a 16-step step sequencer. A step sequencer basically plays one step per whatever note division, and we have quarter notes, eighth notes, 16ths, or 30 seconds, and so you can affect the sort of timing resolution there. So each one of these steps right now is a quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And each blue pad is a note being played, and we can turn them all off. Turn. So you control which notes these pads are playing with the rotary encoders up here, and each one of these rotary encoders controls a pad, and by holding down Shift we can see which scale these encoders are choosing notes from. The chromatic scale, it will choose every note at a semitone interval, and then the major, minor, Dorian, they're all like music theory. We don't need to really worry about those. Suffice to say that choosing a scale will keep the notes that you choose through the rotary encoders to so that they make relevant sense to each other. Obviously the chromatic scale, you can pick any note and then it can get really strange, odd scales, but if you keep everything to within a scale, then everything will play back and sound good. Basically what it comes down to, keeping the notes that you can choose in your sequence to a scale means you can't really go wrong with the programming. So let's have a little play with the controller for now. We'll get back to the sequencer in a second. This micro setup is great. You just want to launch the software and then, let's see, just want to launch the software and plug in the controller. It's connected over USB and just jam away. That's absolutely so just plugging in, playing, and already feeling good, just having fun, creating something, making music. And it's not about being Michelangelo and creating the Sistine Chapel. This is just about getting in, getting the creative juices flowing, having some fun with it, and getting out. It's about quick, bite-sized portions throughout the day that allow us to find some time and play. There's always room and an avenue for creating masterpieces, and there's a time and a place for that. This show here at Creative Briefings, we're making little brief bite-sized playtimes of creativity. So let's take a quick look over at the Beatstep Controller software that allows us to tell us what each of these controls, the pads and dials, do. So if I go to here, and so as you can see, each one of these dials and pads corresponds to one of the pads on the hardware. And we can, if we look at the encoders, we select one, and I can select which type of function it's going to perform, a certain range, although that's really doesn't really do much. Which MIDI channel, I can set a different MIDI channel to each one of these encoders, so it can, in theory, control several pieces of software or several pieces of hardware through the one the one piece of control hardware here. And then importantly, here's where you apply the MIDI control change message, and that is a message that says it's just a number over a MIDI channel that can be mapped to a control or function on a software or hardware synth. It may be you have, there are hardware synthesizers, big keyboards but they have lots of menus on them, so it's a lot easier to make something knobby. We talk about knobby synths. That means all the functions are on the surface, so it's very easy to manipulate them in real time, and it's very tactile. Some synths have all their functionality buried in menus, and it's not very practical for a live situation. So something like this exposes some of those functions, and we're able to control them in real time. And this is how we do that. We tell it which number we want this to control. Similarly with the pads, we're telling it which note we want to play, and obviously there are the whole range of like 8 octaves. We can tell it which to play. We can say it can be a note or other MIDI messages we can map to these pads. So I actually have a preset saved that is set up for the Pro53, so that I can just pull up this preset. I've also stored it to, now it's loaded onto the hardware. I can recall preset 16, and I can go to the thing and recall preset 16 here, and that preset I've manufactured on my computer is now living in the hardware. So really useful, really versatile, and there is a 16 presets for the sequencer and 16 presets for the controller. So very versatile, and once you've done your setup on the computer, you can quickly load and retrieve and play. So what does that mean on the on the soft synth? So if I go over there now, I'm not sure if this will pop up. Under here we can view the controller map, and this is really handy, and I wish a lot of other synths did this. If you view the controller map, and no, that's not showing up on screen. I didn't think it would. But basically it's a text list of every single function and its corresponding CC number. Remember, we talked about the CC numbers that are mapped to the dials on the rotary encoders on the Beatstep. Well, this list shows every single function that each one of these virtual knobs on the soft synth are being controlled by. They're mapped at the factory. You can change them yourself, but when the list is already there, it's a lot easier just to make that list, and that's exactly what I've done in the Beatstep setup. So let's have a quick look at what that means. So this controller, I have the LFO speed, so it just changes how fast. Let's pull up a different patch real quick, and we can maybe see what that. See, the rate at that modulation is changing, so that's always fun to play with live. I have a polymod, which is the modulation. It really changes the timbre of the sound. This is controls the mod wheel, the modulation wheel, which in turn can, changes a number of factors at once. And I have the filter cutoff, changes the brightness of the sound, and it's good for fading the sounds out. Filter resonance, just kind of like the sharpness of the filter, and also the filter envelope, and with the filter envelope attack and decay, that changes the way the filter behaves over time. So you can get you fade in and out of the filter using the what they call the envelope. It's basically a time shape so that you can make the envelope open and close. So you can get sounds like. So every time you press it, you wanted to do that, the envelope does that automatically. Down here we have the ADSR envelope for the amplifier, which is the volume of each note, the attack, how quickly it comes in. If it's short and snappy or slow and smooth. We have the decay and the sustain, which is like the overall length and volume of the note, and then the release, how slow that note fades out over time. Short release, it's like immediate. Nice long release, makes for those big dreamy pad sounds. Okay, then we have the onboard delay, which is great for making nice effective warbling sounds. If you get a short release, you can sort of hear the nice short the delay is fun, it's quite a nice sounding delay, and the feedback is how long the delay plays back, how many repeats basically. And then I've got a couple of other modulation functions here for the pulse width. So overall, these are the most common. There's obviously more than 16 knobs on the virtual synth, but the 16 most commonly used ones that I find for myself, I've mapped, and I will able to then play those in real time. So So just by playing these knobs, able to let the sequencer play and so that's great. Now the sequencer can play, and it plays one note at a time. It's monophonic, means it's only going to play one note at a time. It's good for bass lines and lead lines, I suppose. Really good for bass lines, because bass lines, you're not playing chords. Now, you are able to have one channel for the sequencer and one MIDI channel for the controller, so you could in effect control two, have the sequencer controlling one synthesizer, and then the controller you're playing live on another, if you had that sort of setup. For this micro setup, what's really useful is that if you see here in the middle where it says voices, I'm going to turn off unison and then increase that to 8 voices. That makes it polyphonic, which means you can play chords. You can play more than one note at a time. So what that allows us to do is then play just resetting the preset right there, play a sequence and then jam over it, which is obviously really, really fun. also the polyphonic mode, I can now also play chords. The keypad I have set up, I have an A major scale in an upper register and a lower register, so they're like an octave or 2 octaves apart, so I'm able to play simple octave chords. That's really fun. I can actually play simple chords like that, or even better, I can play the lower register chords and like left hand, right hand on the piano. It's really fun. So let's go back to this patch. It's a nice pad sound. Up a little bit. Nice little melody going. So there you have it, just minutes, hours, days of endless fun, and before you know it, I mean, half an hour's gone by and you're feeling good about yourself, feeling good about the world, you're feeling energized, creative brain is firing. So that's what it's all about. Micro setups, this hardware I've talked about before, readily available, used, it's highly affordable, works with obviously iPad apps, hardware synthesizers, software synthesizers. You can just plug in, noodle about and have some fun, get in, get out, and then get on with what else you need to get on with. It's as flexible almost and as fun as just picking up a guitar. Maybe you have a guitar sitting in the corner and you'd never thought about synths before. So It's as easy and as accessible as that. Highly encourage looking out for some soft synths. There's plenty of free ones, and I'll get into those. I know it's not a great example, the Pro53 being discontinued so many years ago. There are other Prophet analog emulations. But my favorite is still the sort of Pro53. Anyway, that has been a quick look at the little world of software synthesizers. I hope this one came off a little better than the last couple of attempts, because yeah, I really do believe, you know, with this little piece of hardware, any cool little piece of software, mapping the controls to them so you can have real-time tactile control over the sounds, and then just playing. One thing I forgot to mention, obviously, with the Beatstep, like I said, is it's set up. Those pads are over the scale. In this case, it was the A major scale. So when you're playing stuff, you can whack anything. You can smash the buttons, and they're in key with each other. You can't make bad music when it's as easy as that, and it's programmed. And it takes a little work up front in the software to program those buttons, but once that's done, like I say, you can just get in and get out and mash the buttons and feel like you're making something, and that's, again, really what it's all about. So have a great weekend, be safe, make good decisions, be creative, and we'll see you next week with Creative Briefing. Thanks for watching.